The sky above Daskara Prime boiled with ash and flame. Rivers of molten rock crawled across the horizon, turning the air into shimmering waves of heat. Every breath burned in the lungs. Every heartbeat echoed in Mason Hale's ears beneath the unrelenting roar of war. The 12th Terran Infantry had been fighting without rest for 36 hours, holding back the Thren Axis, a relentless alien war machine of armored exoskeletons and energy-scything blades. They had come like locusts, spilling from the volcanic ridges in endless numbers, their battle cries metallic and inhuman. Now, they were losing. Badly. "Fall back! All units, fall back to the extraction point!" The commander's voice cracked over comms, urgency replacing any pretense of control. Mason stumbled over the cracked obsidian ground, scanning the smoke-shrouded slopes. Soldiers around him were little more than silhouettes, coughing, limping, some dragging wounded comrades. Behind them, the Thren advanced like a black tide, weapons glowing hot in the choking gloom. The evacuation route funneled into a narrow basalt canyon, its jagged walls funneling men and machines into a desperate choke point. Already, traffic jammed the pass. Troop carriers idling, medics shouting, soldiers cramming shoulder to shoulder. Mason's gut tightened. This was bad. If the Thren broke through before the last carrier launched, it would be a slaughter. The commander was there, shouting orders, eyes darting between the incoming swarm and the congested canyon mouth. He didn't have to say it aloud. Someone had to hold that gap. Someone had to stay behind. The hesitation in the air was like gravity. Everyone looked at each other, but no one stepped forward. Mason felt it then. The heavy certainty of choice. This was the moment. "I'll hold it," he said, voice calm but final. The commander's eyes widened. "Hale, you won't—" "I know, but you'll get the rest out." The ashfall thickened, hissing softly as it landed on his armor. He stepped away from the safety of the canyon mouth and toward the open killing field, every step echoing like a countdown. His position was a half-collapsed ridge of basalt, jagged rocks providing cover, the perfect vantage to cut down anything that came near. The heat from the lava rivers painted the world in shades of red and gold, shadows flickering like restless spirits. He knelt, rifle steady, heart calm. Through the sights, the Thren emerged from the haze, dozens, then hundreds, advancing in perfect mechanical unison. Their blades caught the molten light. He exhaled slowly. "All right, come and get me." The first wave came out of the haze, like shadows solidifying into monsters. They were Thren frontline troopers, towering, four-armed warriors encased in segmented obsidian armor, their elongated helms crowned with curved horns that glowed faintly from within. Each one carried a plasma spear, its crackling tip spitting arcs of green lightning into the smoke-choked air. Their footfalls made the cracked basalt tremble. Mason steadied his breath and squeezed the trigger. The rifle barked 3 sharp bursts, each one finding its mark in the narrow gaps between armor plates. The first warrior fell, twitching. The others bellowed in their alien tongue, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated in his chest. They rushed. Mason shifted position, using the basalt ridge to break their line of sight. A grenade arced high, landing amid the charging group. A white-hot flash erupted, sending shards of armor and molten rock into the air. The survivors staggered, momentarily blinded, and Mason capitalized, dropping 2 more before they regained formation. Ash stung his eyes. The air smelled of scorched metal and burned ozone. His lungs burned, but he didn't stop firing. Every second he bought meant another carrier lifting off with his people. Then his comms crackled. But it wasn't human chatter. A voice, deep, layered with an unnatural resonance, rolled through his headset in a language half understood from intelligence briefings. It was measured, deliberate, commanding. Mason caught fragments through the translation subroutine. The human sniper. Hold the gap. Precision too high. I will handle this. Mason's brow furrowed. Whoever this was, he wasn't just another Thren officer. Another wave pushed forward, this one using the ruined terrain for cover. Mason's eyes darted to the narrow magma bridge spanning a lava river 50 meters to his left, a natural bottleneck in the Thren advance. If they crossed that, they could flank him in minutes. He scrambled from his position, fire licking at his boots from the molten flow below. Pulling a high-yield charge from his belt, he armed it, hurled it onto the bridge, and dove behind a jagged pillar of rock. The explosion was deafening. The bridge went in a spray of molten shards, collapsing into the lava with a hiss that sent steam towering into the already dark sky. The shockwave threw several Thren from the ridge, their armored forms sinking into the glowing current. There was silence for a beat. Then that same voice returned, closer now. Impressive for a human. Through the roiling steam, Mason saw him, General Varric. Twice the height of his soldiers, his armor etched with molten runes that pulse like a heartbeat. 4 plasma blades mounted along his forearms. His helmet bore a crown of jagged obsidian spikes, and his eyes, visible through the visor slit, burned with a predatory gold. Behind him, the Thren halted. Varric raised one clawed hand, signaling them to stay back. This fight would be his alone. Mason's rifle felt suddenly small in his hands, but he didn't move. He'd faced death before, just never one wearing a crown of fire. The heat pressed in from all sides, shimmering in the air between Mason and General Varric. The alien towered over him, obsidian armor reflecting the glow of the lava below, runes along his breastplate pulsing like the beat of some colossal heart. Mason's rifle was already half empty. His side throbbed from a jagged shard of basalt that had ripped through the armor plating. Every breath came with a flash of pain, hot and sharp. But retreat wasn't an option. He fired anyway. 3 bursts. 2 hit. Varric didn't even flinch. The alien stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, carrying a weapon unlike anything Mason had seen, a blade of living crystal, translucent yet flowing inside like molten glass. With every shift in Varric's stance, it rippled, humming with lethal energy. Varric spoke, his voice like stone grinding against stone, filtered through Mason's helmet translator. "You fight well, human. Waste to end you quickly." Mason spat a fleck of blood, forcing a smirk. "I'm not here for quick." They moved at the moment silent. Varric lunged, the crystal blade slicing the air where Mason had been. Mason rolled, came up firing, the muzzle flash lighting the alien armor in bursts. Varric blocked with the blade, the plasma rounds disintegrating in flares of green light. The fight became a brutal rhythm. Mason weaving between boulders, using the terrain to keep distance. Varric stalking him with the patience of a predator. Every shot Mason took was calculated. Every movement from Varric was controlled, almost respectful. At one point, Mason's last grenade found its mark, blasting Varric against the canyon wall. The alien rose slowly, a fresh crack running through the crystal blade, and a deeper glow in his eyes. "Good," Varric rumbled. "You understand the fight is not just in the weapon." The alien cast aside the fragments of the damaged blade, drawing a shorter, more vicious-looking shard from his back. Still alive, still humming. He motioned for the surrounding Thren to stay back. The message was clear. This was no longer a battle. This was a duel. Mason's ammo counter blinked low in red. His limbs felt heavy, his breaths ragged. He switched to his combat knife, a Terran alloy blade, pitted and scorched, but still sharp. The clash was pure chaos. Sparks against basalt, steel against crystal, the canyon echoing with the ring of each blow. Mason's blade carved shallow marks in Varric's armor. Varric's strikes sent shocks up Mason's arm. Finally, Mason's knife arm was caught mid-swing. Varric wrenched it aside, the crystal blade at Mason's throat. For a heartbeat, all Mason saw was gold fire in the alien's eyes. He braced for the killing stroke. But it never came. Varric's grip loosened. The blade withdrew. The alien stepped back, tilting his head as if reassessing the human before him. You do not fight for victory. You fight for others. That is rare. Without another word, Varric turned his back, raising a clawed hand to his warriors. The Thren ranks parted. Mason stood there, chest heaving, weaponless, bleeding, and alive. Somewhere behind him, the last Terran carrier roared into the sky. The world came back to Mason in pieces. The hiss of steam vents, the smell of scorched stone, the low murmur of alien voices. His first instinct was to reach for a weapon, but his wrists weren't bound. His armor was gone, replaced with a lightweight thermal wrap. His wounds were sealed with a shimmering resin that pulsed faintly like living tissue. He sat up, heart pounding. The tent he was in was massive, its walls woven from a dark, metallic fiber that shifted colors like oil on water. Through the half-open flap, he could see the volcanic ridges of Daskara Prime, but no Terran banners. Only the jagged black standard of the Thren axis swaying in the heat. A shadow moved at the entrance. General Varric stepped inside. Without his helm, Mason saw his face clearly for the first time. Angular, carved as if from obsidian, with deep-set gold eyes that seemed to burn even in shadow. "You are awake," Varric said in his rumbling voice. Mason's mind ran through every interrogation briefing he ever had. This was it. The alien general was going to question him, break him, or worse. "What's this?" Mason asked, voice hoarse. "Some kind of prisoner hospitality before the torture starts?" Varric tilted his head slightly, as though mildly amused. "No, you are not my prisoner, Sergeant Hale. You are my guest." Mason blinked. Guest? The general paced slowly, his clawed hands clasped behind his back. Among the Thren, when a warrior chooses to stand alone against impossible odds, not for glory, not for conquest, but for the lives of others, they earn what we call the Oath of Blood Honor. In your tongue, perhaps, an honor debt. It binds the victor to the vanquished until the debt is paid. Mason stared at him. "You spared me because of some kind of tradition?" Varric met his gaze without flinching. "Because you fought with courage, and because killing you would have been wasteful." For days, Mason remained in the Thren camp. Instead of beatings, there were medics tending his wounds. Instead of interrogation, there were silent meals and occasional, almost philosophical conversations with Varric about war, honor, and the nature of enemies. Mason learned fragments of the Thren language, enough to catch the way younger warriors whispered when he passed. Disbelief, confusion, even resentment. On the morning of the 5th day, Varric summoned him to the edge of the camp. The sky was streaked with volcanic ash, glowing red in the rising sun. "The debt is acknowledged. You will be returned to your people. Tell them the general of the Thren spared your life. Tell them why." A Thren transport, stripped of weapons, carried Mason back across the battlefield to the Terran lines. He stepped out into stunned silence, Terran soldiers staring like they were seeing a ghost. Within hours, the story spread. The alien general who spared a human soldier out of respect. In the Thren ranks, the whispers grew louder. Warriors began questioning why they fought an enemy who could earn their highest honor. On the Terran side, some began to wonder if the Thren were more than just ruthless killers. But Mason knew one thing. Whatever Varric had done, it had shifted something in the war, and neither side would be able to ignore it for long. The war didn't stop because of one battle or one spared life, but it changed. Weeks later, the Terran 9th Division was dug in on the blackened ridges of Erasmus Crater, holding against yet another Thren offensive. The sky boiled with smoke trails and plasma fire. The ground shook with the tread of enemy war machines. Mason Hale was back in the fight, patched up, rearmed, and once again facing the gold-eyed warriors he had come to know too well. And they were winning. The Thren pushed relentlessly through the Terran lines. One ridge after another fell, until the humans were being forced back toward the crater's rim. Mason crouched behind a shattered rock, his rifle overheating, his squad numbers dwindling. Then, the advance stopped. The alien warriors froze mid-charge, plasma spears lowering in unison. The battlefield fell into a strange, heavy silence, broken only by the hiss of cooling weapons. Through the smoke, Mason saw him, General Varric, standing at the front of his army, his molten runes glowing faintly in the gloom. Varric looked up toward the ridge where Mason yelled. Their eyes met across the chaos. Then, slowly, the general raised his clawed hand to his chest in the Thren warrior salute, the same gesture Mason had seen exchanged between comrades before they went into battle. And just like that, Varric turned to his officers and gave a single order. The Thren ranks shifted, reformed, and began to withdraw. No pursuit, no ambush, just a clean, deliberate retreat. The Terrans had their ground, too stunned to fire. Mason lowered his rifle, the weight of what had just happened sinking in. This wasn't a tactical withdrawal. This was a statement. Within days, the act was all over the Terran networks. The alien general who had halted a battle rather than kill a man he respected. On the Thren side, word of Varric's decision spread like wildfire, sparking debates in war councils and quiet dissent among younger warriors. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But for the first time, diplomats from both sides agreed to meet. Final scene. Mason stood on the crater rim at sunset, watching the sky fade from molten gold to black ash. The war was still out there, heavy and dangerous, but he knew something had shifted. He thought of the basalt canyon on Daskara Prime, of the duel, of the moment a blade had stopped inches from his throat. His voice was quiet, almost lost to the wind. Sometimes one act of honor can end more bloodshed than 100 victories. The wind carried the words into the dark, toward the enemy lines, where somewhere, maybe, Varric was looking at the same horizon.